translation because we have some session that we speak a third language. So if you have a translation, maybe it is very useful for you to understand. You can take the translation in the front of the conference rooms. Okay. Okay, and before we start, I will explain about the translation channel system. Channel 1 is for English and the channel 2 is for Thai. So and then I will say in Thai for some Thai participant. ถ้าคนไทยท่านใดต้องการจะฟังที่การแปลจากภาษาอังกฤษเป็นภาษาไทยไปเอาหูฟังจากเจ้าหน้าที่ที่อยู่หน้าห้องประชุมได้นะครับ
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mingalaba.
สวัสดีครับ
First of all, we would like to mention the appreciation for your attendance in this event. I am Chamia Jipu from Myanmar and
My name is Sun from Thailand.
We are going to be your MC for this program. I would like to announce the program in brief. We all already went through the registration. So when the program will get started, there will be welcome and opening remarks from our vulnerable guests.
The first panel is a 40-year inspiring change perspective for the next decade. And after this session, we will take 30 minutes for coffee break.
After the break, there will be a section about urgent messages to the world, brief statements by Right Livelihood Award laureates panel.
Okay, and next panel is Educating for Right Livelihood, Connecting Activism and Academia with Future Generation in Mind.
After that, there will be closure activity section and also group photo. So before we start our program, we would like to request two things. The first thing is, if you don't feel comfortable with that, taking pictures of you and using it in social media and other channels, please let us know right away. And the second thing is, Amy, could you please announce about your information? Yeah. Please come forward.
So hello everyone, I'm Amy from the Right Livelihood Foundation. I would like to invite everyone, if you have internet connection here in this room, to, or even after the event, to share your thoughts, your best memories, stories, or interesting ideas that you've come up during the public forum today with the hashtag Right Livelihood Award, and tag us at Right Livelihood on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Whichever platform you're on. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sir. Thank you, Amy. Now, it is time for welcome and opening remarks. Firstly, we would like to invite Emeritus Professor Sudichai Wankiang from Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, Chulalongkorn University.
Thank you, Sun and Pio. Mingalaba. Sawadee krab. I said Mingalaba first because now I have a son-in-law who is a Burmese. So this is something also related to Ajahn Sulak, because in the context I didn't know this until Ajahn Sulak told me. So I started this with a very informal way, but maybe I really need to say some formal words first. His Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden, Ajahn Sulak, who has been our teacher, and we are really exploiting him even today. We are also very honored to have the laureates under the Right Livelihood Award network. We are very happy and honored to have all of you here. More, not only about the seniors that we need to pay respect to, but the younger voices, the younger people whom we, in the past, we may not have included them in our education forum enough. But now, we need to have this kind of event even more on campus. My first word is about how we, as a national university, Chulalongkorn University now is 103 years old. It has been a national university in the context where Thailand also have been a part of the global colonial struggle in some way or the other. But as this university need to find its own sense of responsibility in today's world, this specific meeting and forum initiated by colleagues are very important for us to be open for new solidarity and new dimension of learning. Chula has been very much a specialized disciplines, but today the planet Earth cannot allow over specialization become a dominant system anymore. So we are very honored and happy to welcome all of you in the spirit of partnership, in the spirit of reorientation, and also in the spirit of opening space for the future together. And with these words, I humbly welcome all of you, and we look forward for the next exchange and your kind participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. Next, we would like to welcome Dr. Monica Griffin, Vice Chair of the Right Livelihood Foundation Board.
Dear Sulak, dear Vice President, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for the hospitality which we have here as Right Livelihood Foundation. Thank you that we can have this first conference in a row in Bangkok within our 40th anniversary after the big event in Sweden in November. And I just want to make some opening remarks to explain a little bit what the Right Livelihood Foundation does for those of you who don't know them yet. My name is Monika Griffan, and I was co-founder of German Greenpeace, but I was also in government as environmental minister in a land in Germany, and I was also in the parliament. But I have been in the board and jury of the Right Livelihood Foundation since 1986, so I know a lot of the laureates personally, and I've visited a lot of them, and I admire really the work under very difficult circumstances, which they are doing, most of them. The Right Livelihood Award was established in 1980 to honor and support courageous people solving global problems. And there are now 178 laureates from 70 countries. This is a little bit wrong on that one, but you can put this down now, who gets long life support in different ways. The founder of the award, and you see them, the spread is, now there is no spread, Okay. The founder of the award is basically was Jakob von Uxküll, who, just as most of our laureates and many others, alarmed by the disconnection between the urgency of global problems and the way the international community was dealing with them. He wanted to recognize people and organizations moving away from the Western cultural arrogance shown in the development debate with its focus on material growth, instead shining a light on new paths to a just and sustainable world, including ancient human wisdom from around the globe. The laureates' various work is also an early warning system for planet Earth, as our laureate from the US, Francis Moore-Lappé, put it during our last big conference 10 years ago, the 30th anniversary conference in Bonn. But they also show solutions, like our friends from SECAM, where Mona Abouleish is here today, or Tony Rinaldo, who both are greening the desert, which is really a sign of hope, or Gramin Shakti from Bangladesh, who show that cheap solar energy for each household is possible, and women can install it. That's, I think, a really good result. But the foundation also provides support and protection for our laureates. That is also one of the results which came out of the 30th anniversary meeting we had 10 years ago. Another outcome from previous meetings between laureates is the creation of the Livelihood College, which was inaugurated in 2009 and also initiated by one of our laureates, Anwar Fazal, who unfortunately cannot be here today. So, besides celebrating 40 years of Right Livelihood Foundation, we also celebrate 10 years of Right Livelihood College. And we have now 9 universities, including here in Bangkok, participating. And I'm very thankful for this wonderful cooperation. It is a systemic platform linking academics and students from 9 universities all over the continents, as you see. It's Latin America, it's Africa, it's Asia, it's Europe, so it's everywhere. And the college is a model for harnessing universities for social transformation and involve the younger generation of students in meaningful research related to the work of the laureates, plus multiplying their work, which is very important, so that doesn't stand with the laureates alone, but it goes on, and that's very important. We are in an unusual moment where many crises and opportunities are converging together much faster than in the past. And that is not a saying of this year. It's a saying from Pat Mooney, one of our laureates from Canada, 10 years ago in Bonn. And that hasn't changed, it is the same. So, we have now our youngest laureate, Greta Thunberg, from 2019. We are opening here to more cooperation, not only with universities, but also with other young people who are active, like the Fridays for Future movements, where we will have also a representative here this afternoon in the discussion later on. Events like this one are important stepping stones to strengthen each other in the hard work we have ahead of us, tackling various threats and crises. But what we also want to do is enjoy the beauty and the spirit of life and of being together. Let's doing that today, and thank you very much for hosting us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Monica. The next welcome and opening remarks is from Sweden's ambassador to Thailand. May I invite His Excellency Stefan Harriston.
I will follow the example by Professor Sopichai, starting with Saudi Krap and also Mingalaba. Mingalaba, since I'm also the Swedish ambassador to Myanmar. Haven't learned so many more words in the language, I apologize, but at least that one. Ajahn Sulak, dear laureates, dear participants, dear friends. 40 years ago, I was a fairly young student. I was engaged in Swedish politics at the time, but I can't say that I really had very clear ideas about a possible professional path in life. If somebody would have told me that 40 years down the road you would be standing like I do now, being ambassador, I most likely wouldn't have believed a single word of that. However, there's one thing I do remember. Like many of my friends, I was passionate about development aid, as it often was called at the time. Global poverty was a major driver of our engagement. Injustices, oppression in so many countries all over the world, east, west, north, south. The closest capital to Stockholm isn't Oslo or Copenhagen, that's Tallinn. But Tallinn was behind the Iron Curtain. The victim of occupation and oppression just wasn't really present in our minds. On top of that, we saw already then environmental degradation of our planet increasingly present in our minds and actions. 40 years ago, that was also the year when the Right Livelihood Award was created. I didn't know about it at the time, probably heard on TV, but can't remember. But I recognized the drivers behind the award and behind the movement because I grew up in the same atmosphere. Congratulations to the foundation and to all the laureates present here today. It's an honor to be here addressing this public forum. And as a son of 2 teachers and a husband to a third one, I feel inspired to know that education will be very much in focus here during these days. My engagement eventually led me in the 90s to the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, where I spent 12 of the most inspiring and engaging years of my professional life, followed by roughly the same number of years as ambassador in East Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central Europe. These have been decades when we have experienced certainly some remarkable progress in global development. We see decreasing levels of absolute income poverty and child mortality. Access to education has improved. We saw 1989 the fall of the Berlin Wall and the following democratic wave. Millions and millions of people, including those living close to us in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, where I've been ambassador, gaining a political freedom that once was regarded as unthinkable. In 2015, the global community mobilized behind the Agenda 2030, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and the Paris Agreement against global warming. Major steps forward. Today, however, we are facing increasingly challenging circumstances in several key areas. The effects of climate change are becoming more and more visible, while the actions needed to change course are not. Inequality is on the rise in many, many countries. The idea, the simple idea, but so fundamental for our future, the idea of a rules-based multilateral world order is under serious threat. We see it in various contexts, everything from the World Trade Organization up to the threat to the Paris Agreement. And democracy is backtracking. Freedom House reports for 13 consecutive years regression in terms of political freedom. There's certainly no wave of increased freedom anymore. The wave we see, that's about authoritarianism, of oppression. We see freedom of expression reduced. We see human rights defenders harassed. We see enforced disappearances continue to take place. I'm very honored to see Shui Meng, the wife of the disappeared Laotian activist Sombat Sompona here today. It's an honor to meet you every time we meet each other. And in the area of gender equality, a key commitment for feminist governments like the Swedish one, we see that conservative forces are trying to restrict the right of women and girls to decide over their own bodies, and hence we increasingly need to fight to protect the gains of the past, when our focus rather ought to be the patriarchal structures and inequalities that remain. And they are still many for sure. Still, I'm not a pessimist. During my lifetime, I've seen, as I said, so many unthinkables becoming reality, more often than not because of courageous individual human beings. Courageous people joining forces to make change happen. Just recently, we have been witnessing, as was mentioned here, how the young Swedish activist Greta Thunberg's peaceful school strike outside the Swedish parliament started a global movement for climate action and climate justice. I'm happy to know now that you, Right Livelihood, have given her your award. And here in Thailand, I've met 12-year-old Kun Lily from Bye Bye Plastic Bags Thailand, and 21-year-old Lynn from Climate Strike Thailand. Kun Lily visited us just a couple of days ago when we met together, many of us being here today. And they act very much in the same spirit. They do it because they know that decisions and actions taken today will define their future of tomorrow. We need to listen to them and we need to act. There is no planet B. And let me just end with emphasizing what we here might all agree upon, but what many strongmen and authoritarian rulers all over the world beyond us would object to. The simple fact, individual human beings have rights. Freedom of expression, freedom of assembly are among those fundamental rights clearly expressed in the UN Universal Declaration on Human Rights, recently celebrating its 70th anniversary. These are not Swedish values. They're not European values. These are not Western values. They are global norms formulated by the global community, all of us in the United Nations, after one of the darkest periods ever experienced by mankind, the period of the Second World War, of mass murder, of the Holocaust. It's not only right to promote these norms, it's our moral duty. Yes, certainly the space for free speech and a vibrant civil society and human rights defenders is shrinking. And yes, we are living in challenging times, but there's no natural law making that happen. It happens because there are power structures and oppressive rulers making it happen. And the tide can turn again and needs to turn again. Let's all join forces to make that simple vision come true. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Ambassador. Next, let's hear the welcome and open remark from the founder of เสถียรโกษตรนะครับอาชีพ1995 Right Livelihood Laureate Venerable อาจารย์สุรักษ์ศิวรักษา Please welcome.
Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, since I am the only local laureate, I would like to thank the organizers from Stockholm, Geneva, Bangkok, 3 different places, and working hard together to produce this symposium. And this symposium is not only an exchange intellectually, exchanging ideas, which is very fruitful, but they also bring in beauty, as you can see, beautiful music before this session. And after this, they will also go to the ashram, which is a place for alternative lifestyle, spiritual, mental. So I must say, they have planned very well, and I'm pretty sure the result would be good and great. The only thing I miss personally is Jacob von Uxkel, who is not only the founder of the Livelihood Award, but he also founder of Future World Council. As you know, some good countries have ombudsmen to guide the nation consciously towards the future. The World Future Council is trying modestly, humbly, to guide the world towards the future of the world, socially, environmentally. So I really miss Jacob von Uxkel. I hope his health will be restored and he will be with us longer, to be with us for the good of the world. As you know, Livelihood Award is known as Alternative Nobel. It really is alternative. The awardees are not great people, unlike people like Henry Kissinger, who advised Nixon to kill so many million people. I think those who receive Alternative Nobel really care for human rights, care for the quality of life, and I'm very proud to be one of them. Now, regarding the theme, education for livelihood, some of you may know the word livelihood. It comes from the Buddha. The Noble Eightfold Path is the path the Buddha provided for us. Livelihood is only in the middle. You have to start with the right view. That is, you must learn to be less selfish, learn to be more humble, and with right view, right effort, right conduct, 8 altogether. But summarize it into 3. That the essence of education. Number 1 is called Sila. You must learn not to exploit yourself and others. Think carefully. Many of us exploit ourselves in the name of success, in the name of power, riches. One must learn not to exploit oneself and others. And to do that, you need the second step, samadhi. Learn to use your heart, to bring your heart and your thought together. I think this is very much missing in the world, because the most important element in our life is not our thought, not cogito ergo sum like Descartes proclaimed, but the most important for our life is breathing. In Buddhism, you don't have to live in the Buddha. If you stop breathing for 5 minutes, you'll be dead. But what do we breathe in? We breathe in a lot of anxiety, we breathe in a lot of greed, and samadhi teaches us to breathe properly. You don't have to be Buddhist. If you are Christian, you can breathe in Christ. If you are an atheist, agnostic, you just breathe in mindfully. And through breathing, you can reconstruct your consciousness. You change greed into generosity. You change hatred into loving kindness. And ultimately, you can change delusion into wisdom. You see, Sila, not to exploit yourself and others. Samadhi, train your mind through breathing, and then you get panya, prajna, wisdom. That is, you learn to understand what is real, what is not real. And I think this would be the basic for education. I hope for those of you who go for alternative education, you don't have to believe me, but perhaps you take my words seriously. And for only for that, I shall always remain grateful to all of you. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ajahn Sulab.
And thank you everyone for your kind welcome remarks.
Now, this is time for the program about 40 years inspiring change, perspectives for the next decade. Please welcome Emeritus Professor Surichai Wankiao to moderate this section. And may I request Professor Surichai to introduce our keynote speakers. Let's welcome.
Thank you. I am commanded by the young MCs to be your moderator for this session. 40 years is a context where Right Livelihood Award has been a player, has been an institution, has been an ecology of new sensitivity for all of us, new solidarity. So in that aspect, may I invite our speakers to come to the, will we have each speaking at the, yes? Okay, so I think I follow the message that we will have 3 keynote speakers for these 40 years, looking back and also, more importantly, looking forward. May I now invite the first speaker, the person whom in our context are much familiar because he also has a few books in Thai language. In Thailand as well as in the global context. Dr. Wandana Chiva, may I welcome you to the podium? Yes.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Excellency, for your words. Dear fellow laureates, the community from the Right Livelihood Colleges, and the amazing young people who are here. You are a hope. And in these times where we need all the hope to address the multiple threats we face. This morning, we were reminded about the threats that Davi is facing in the Amazon, because the Amazon is facing threats. Because we've become so stupid, we have to grow GMO soya by cutting the Amazon to then export it for animal feed all over Europe and China and all over the world, when small farms around the world provide 80% of the food we eat. And yet the illusion carries on that small farms must be destroyed. For me, Earth democracy is the simple recognition that we are part of an Earth family. We are related to all other species. Sulak talked about breathing in and breathing out. We call it Soham. But if the trees weren't there, we wouldn't have the oxygen to breathe in. If the trees weren't there, the amazing capacity to take the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and put it into the soil, that capacity wouldn't be there. So when we are breathing in and breathing out, we are actually being conscious of the amazing interconnectedness. And my 50 years of work, I got the Alternative Nobel Prize in '93 for helping converge the discourse between women's rights, ecological rights, and development. Part of it is I've learned a lot from peasant women. I always say I did my quantum theory in the University of Western Ontario, where I learned non-separation, potential, uncertainty, and I learned my ecology from the University of Chipko about simple connections between our forests and our rivers. And the women had to wake up the world to say, these forests are not timber mines. They are the sources of our rivers. And it's not an accident that the sources of our rivers are the most sacred pilgrim sites of India. They're from my region. I come from this region where the Ganges emerges. We have been taught repeatedly in all cultures, all indigenous cultures, including civilizations like mine, that we are part of one earth, we're part of one universe. All beings have a right to the gifts of this earth. Taking more than your share is stealing the share from other species, from other humans, and from future generations. So we have constructed an economy based on war, theft, and colonialism. And we call it an economy when economy is supposed to mean the art of living. Oikonomia means the art of living. It's derived from the same word oikos, from which ecology is derived, which means our common home. So if today our common home is a mess, it's because of a few people's greed. And Gandhi had reminded us the earth has enough for everyone's needs, but not for a few people's greed. This process exterminated 90% of indigenous Americans. Raul reminded us of this while we were discussing the atrocities going on in Brazil, and our MST colleagues who are there defending the land and defending the rights of the landless. They are part of this struggle. 60 million of my people in the most fertile area of the world were decimated for famine because of the greed of extraction. They called it Lagan. 9 million women were burnt as witches over 250 years because women knowing was a crime. And all of these processes were interconnected. This idea of a dead earth was constructed just like hate is constructed today. Divisions between people are constructed today. And there was a legal concept created of bio nullius, the empty land. If we don't occupy it from Europe, it's empty. The Aboriginals don't exist, the Indians don't exist, the indigenous people don't exist. And this has given us both the violation of the rights of nature and the rights of people. This dead earth idea of an empty earth then very naturally grew into the issue that has shaped my life, the empty life idea, that plants don't have their self-organization capacity. The Thais didn't evolve the jasmine rice, and we didn't evolve the basmati rice. It gets patented by a Texas company called Rice Tech. So I started to save seeds because there was this idea in the WTO, or at least in the GATT, that corporations who brought us chemicals now wanted to own the seed through patents through genetic engineering. And I said, oh, GMO, for them means God move over. But the seed has its rights. It is self-organized life. Farmers have their rights because they've given us the seeds. People have rights to good food that come from good seed. We've forgotten all of these connections. It was in 99 June, I remember, I was working with our communities, and I brought them the information of biopiracy. The basmati had been pirated. The GATT had become WTO in 95. I brought them this information, and they made this amazing declaration. Communities from 200 villages up in the Himalaya. They said, all of life is related. The forests and the animals in the forests are cows and our bullocks. The rivers, we are one family. And they declared a living democracy movement. They said, we will not accept patents, we will not accept poisons, we will not accept GMOs. And they started to write postcards to the chief of WTO, Michael Moore, to say, you have overstepped your jurisdiction. We make laws about protecting life in our village. This is real democracy. We will not accept your laws. And they wrote to the pirates such a beautiful letter. They said, even in the village, sometimes people will steal because they're desperate. Someone's hungry, so they'll steal bread. Someone's mother is ill, so they'll steal something to take her to hospital. Please come and explain under the banyan tree in our village, what is your desperation that you must steal the knowledge and the seeds of the poor? This campaign then started to shape both a new democracy movement, but also a new defense of indigenous biodiversity and rights. That November, we met in Seattle to tell WTO that it has to stop this free trade logic. We want multilateralism, as His Excellency mentioned, but not on the wrong rules. And that's when I was, journalists would come up and say, oh, you anti-globalizers know what you're against, but you don't know what we are for. I said, no, we are against patenting of life because we know we love life. We are against biopiracy because we know people have innovated. And out of this grew the Earth Democracy concepts and my Earth Democracy book, and I'll be very happy to give you a gift, Your Excellency. Copenhagen failed as a climate summit, which is why the Paris Agreement had to be created, because the UN framework was dismantled. And it was Evo Morales, who was then the Prime Minister of Bolivia, who said we were supposed to be here to defend the rights of Mother Earth, not the rights of polluters. So I'm going to go home and work on a declaration on the rights of Mother Earth. And then a community was created. Out of this grew a whole movement of the rights of nature and the rights of Mother Earth. And a parallel draft declaration was prepared to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Let me just share a few points with you. Mother Earth is living, unique, indivisible, self-regulating community of interrelated beings that sustain, contains, and reproduce all beings. Earth being is defined by its relationship as an integral part of Mother Earth. Inherent rights of Mother Earth are inalienable in that they arise from the same source as existence. Mother Earth and all beings are entitled to all the inherent rights recognized in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as may be made between organic and inorganic beings, species, origin, use. Just as human beings have human rights, all other beings also have rights which are specific to their species or kind and appropriate to their role and functions within the community of life. The rights of each being are limited by the rights of all other beings. That is the scope of rights of the earth and human rights. It is time in the next 10 years for our community, both of the laureates as well as the Right Livelihood colleges, to do the work that shows that the human rights flow from rights of the earth. The earth comes first because we are part of her. What are children dying of? Lack of water. What are children dying of? Lack of food. What are children dying of? Toxic contaminants that are giving them cancer. Cancer for children is exploding. It is now time to overcome this apartheid that was artificially created between nature, of which we are a part, and humans. And out of this apartheid then grew the idea that some humans are superior. Capitalist patriarchy created the illusion of patriarchy, which you referred to. Civilizing mission of religion created the idea of superior religions, which is now spread like a disease around the world. Superiority of race, religion, gender is what becomes the fuel for the hate politics. And I see the economics of greed that is violating our democracy needs today a partnership with the politics of hate, because it is a divide and rule policy. at a time where 1% rules, especially when that 1% increases its appetite at a time where the planet is already threatened with climate change, species extinction, disappearing water, desertified land. All UN treaties are telling us we have a 10-year window in order to maintain the conditions for human life on Earth. 10 years of shift. And that is the 10 years that our work, our collective work, must be oriented. If we think of the genocide in the Amazon, what is it? Here are indigenous communities that have protected their forests and land for millennia. And yet their land has to be grabbed by an economy that is already collapsing. In our country, fellow laureate Colin is here, our country is burning because of new laws to design illegality for the majority of Indians. Detention centers are being created on the border of the United States and Mexico and across India. You talked about the Holocaust. Concentration camps came out of that time. It is as if people will be burnt and removed from their homes, others will be put in new detention centers, and we will all become illegal aliens in our common home. I have been talking to my colleagues who are in the movement that it is time to remember that our citizenship comes from being born as earth beings of the earth. It's given by the earth, not by communal, corrupt, dictatorial states. We need a whole new definition of identity, that our identity comes from the earth, not, as Samuel Huntington said, we can only know who we are if we know who we hate. No, we know who we are because of what we love. And I want to end with 2 lines from our beautiful national anthem. And this is inspired by the fact that when you had your reception in your home and your wife had a wonderful balcony with a garden, let us together grow gardens of diversity and weave garlands of love.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vandana Shiva. I think all of you would agree with me that the message about democracy need to be really redefined in the context of new urgencies. And that must be grounded in the recognition that man as a part of nature, not separated from nature. And that man means not only this male sex, but what we have been doing with democracy exploited on the other side is let it link with hate politics, and it has been one side. But to the meaning of the next 10 years, this message, grounding ourselves on the earth, grounding ourselves on the home, the common home, grounding ourselves on the oikos that you really has mentioned, in some way also strengthen some words said in this campus last November. The Pope Francis was here. Very much the same message, strengthened by your words today, that this is really the core of new reference to our identity for the future. And this identity politics must be a part of our common work, and here our young people also a part. And we hope we will follow this discussion further. May I now invite you to listen to our next keynote speaker, the laureate of the year 2000 of the Right Livelihood Award. in the context where in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, we also have learned about the life of some very important person who represent the spirit of our definition of democracy, but the person has been made disappear. We are very honored. The ambassador already mentioned with Madame Shui Meng with us here, but we will, at the moment, I would like to introduce you to our spirit who we really owe a lot, our laureate, Mr. Munir, represented by his wife. And may I invite Madame Suciwati and also Indria Fonida to come up to share with us. Madame Munir, or her name is Suciwati. I only have seen her photo. I met her for the first time in the ambassador's residence, a few hours of her arrival. For us in this country, we have been talking about ASEAN, as you may know. These words have been quite empty in some way. With meeting her, I think I would like also to recognize that how precious time we can have to listen to her, who have borne the burden, the suffering of someone who has carried with her, with the husband, Mr. Munir, who was really an important figure in our human rights in Indonesia and the whole world. So now I also was told that Madam Suciwati will speak in Indonesian, in Bahasa Indonesia. So would you kindly use the channel 1 for your earphone? Yes, please begin, Madam.
Thank you, Professor. Oke. Hadirin sekalian, laureates, Mr. Ambassador, friend, teman-teman dan pembela HAM yang saya hormati, saya merasa bersyukur berada di sini bersama Anda semua untuk berbagi pemikiran dan pengalaman tentang perjalanan panjang yang telah saya lalui untuk memerangi
fighting impunity and promoting the principle of human rights in Indonesia.
16 tahun yang lalu,
Friends, 16 years after the assassination of my husband Munir, the impunity of the mastermind of his murder continues. Legal justice through various avenues, but the powers that be maintains its protection of the perpetrators.
6 tahun yang lalu saya meniti jalan baru menuju
6 years ago,
melalui pendirian
I have opened another path to promote human rights through the establishment of Munir Human Rights Museum. I believe that human rights education is a key to create the next generation of citizens who are strongly committed to uphold human rights. This way, future human rights violation and impunity will be reduced. On the other hand, this is a step is a turning road, opening the door to dialogue with the state in carrying out the fulfillment of human rights as part of its responsibility. The Munir Human Rights Museum delivers human rights education not just through exhibition in the museum, but also through publication of human rights teaching modules for teachers, training, and art activities. The museum became the platform for the first group to learn and integrate human rights principles and apply them in everyday life. Through the museum, I have found new allies in my lonely journey to seek justice. I'm delighted to share with you that this year the new and larger Munir Human Rights Museum will be built through dialogue and funding from local government, which Munir was born. Aside from those local government, countless individuals and organizations from diverse professional backgrounds also provide support to build the museum, which might be the first museum in Indonesia. Despite the tremendous support we receive for the museum, I'm sad to say that the human rights condition in my country is declining. I'm ever sadder to share with you that the government has shown little or even no interest to fulfill the commitment to upholding human rights and end impunity. I am troubled that the progress we have made to date will be eroded with the rising trend of neo-authoritarianism in Indonesia. In this situation, I call on the international partners to show a concrete support for human rights defenders. In specific, a concrete support is needed for both in the advocacy for ending impunity as well as in the human rights education through the Human Rights Museum, Munir. It is not longer enough to just stand on the fences, giving awards and make it a statement. The international partners must walk the talk and action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Munir, Madam Suciwati. The museum will not be in Jakarta. It will be in Malang. What she kindly shared with us is that the situation after the loss of life and some recognition that the illegal act has done to the life of Mr. Munir, it has not been so much improvement. What you have mentioned also, that the hard work along the line of having a museum in the local and supported by also the solidarity of the local government is also has some encouraging sign for all of us too. So along your message, may I say that the solidarity, the sense of we share together the future, and the challenge of impunity for human rights violation need really to be taken within a country, but beyond. It is a regional and also global concern. And with this, some steps with the museum and some steps of the new step into the future, set example by the struggle, Madam Munir and the colleagues in Indonesia. We need to also work together for the next step for our solidarity and future. Now may I turn to our last speaker for this session, The next keynote is also our laureate, Livelihood laureate, Mr. Colin Gonzalez. May I invite you to kindly share with us your words for how reflecting back and also looking forward for the next decade, please.
I was to reach yesterday, and I had to cancel my ticket and come today because there was an attack by the police in India on the students in Delhi and the neighboring state of Uttar Pradesh. I say this because I want the young students who attended the conference this morning to know of the difficulties that they will face in the years to come if they take to the path of human rights and in the enforcement of human rights. Where a few days ago the police went into the hostels of the students, fired tear gas shells at point blank range, used the lathis on the heads, the sticks, the police sticks on the heads of the students, cracked open skulls, and broke many bones. The police thought that by doing that, they would prevent the students from demonstrating again. And they were boasting that they will never again come back on the streets and protest once they get the beating of their lives. And they were surprised to see that after they were taken to the intensive care units, and then the bandages and the plasters and the operations happened, within a week's time the students were back on the streets again, great heroes and leaders of the movement for democracy in India. We are fighting a great struggle against fascism, where people are losing their lives for no other reason that they wanted to do a march to Parliament, where 10, 20, 30,000 persons would have surrounded Parliament. And that embarrassment for the government of India was unbearable. And that is why the unprovoked attacks took place. And so I want to tell the students who are participating here today, and all the students to whom these messages will go, that the path of human rights and the struggle for human rights is not an easy path. But if you surmount the initial fear, the initial beatings, the initial interrogations by the police, and you stand firm, the enemy is ultimately a very weak enemy. And absent the police, they cannot handle dissent of this magnitude, this kind of protests of these magnitudes. We are stronger than they are. We are more numerical than they are. We have greater grit than the state. It is only if they manage to frighten us, students of India, or students of the world actually, that they will survive. I wanted to speak actually on law, but I changed my mind after listening to the conference this morning. And I'll give you a little gist of those of you who are law students, or if any law student were to hear this. The law in the developing country is revolutionary. I'm sorry to say the law in the developed country is pretty conservative. And the big change between these two systems is that in the developing world you have constitutions that allow for collective petitions. So like in the right to food case where the Supreme Court ordered subsidized food grain for 500 million people in one case, it changed the scenario regarding hunger and malnutrition in India. In the Manipur case, I believe the ambassador spoke of or you sir, I think you spoke of the disappearance cases. In a tiny state of Manipur in the northeast, we had 1,523 disappearances over a period of 25 years. We think of India as a very democratic, peaceful, in Gandhian terms, non-violent country. That's all a myth. We are the most violent country in the developing world. And in that case, the Supreme Court intervened. One case for 1,500 mothers and wives of the disappeared persons, ordered the prosecution of the army officers and the police. And in Vishaka's case, where we don't have a sexual harassment law, the Supreme Court intervened and gave guidelines for the punishment of those who sexually harass girls and women in schools and colleges. So it's an extraordinary system. And I would appeal to all of you, if you're in Africa, Latin America, or Asia, we have constitutions, and the practice of using that constitution is truly revolutionary, where you can bring a great deal of results to a large number of people who are too poor to go to the court themselves. My other piece of advice is, or rather friendly exhortation is, if any young person wants to change the world, you must begin with yourself. And if you don't have that determination and grit to change yourself first, you can never be a good human rights person. You must want to live simply. You must want to live a very different life. You must not have the aspirations and ambitions of ordinary people for the ordinary pleasures of life. Because human rights work, I must say, is deeply spiritual work. It is work of the spirit. And if you can't control things, and if you can't go a spiritual path, and be resolute no matter what. I remember when we were young, we had no money, we had no place to stay. Even after I had a degree from a very prestigious IIT university, we had no money because we were working on a pittance. A human rights activist must want only that, satisfaction for the soul and a moderate and decent life. No human rights lawyer or activist, starves in this country or in my country. But your focus has to be very different. I had the good fortune of having a very militant trade unionist when I left college. And he was very militant. I was criticized for joining him because he used certain tactics that were not very orthodox, let us say. But he taught me one thing, and this is what I want to say to all the young people who participated. He taught me to be able to see working class people and their lives and the problems through the eyes of the working class. So human rights work is actually a shedding of your middle class or upper middle class vision of the world. And slowly and gradually, as you live and work among people who are poor, working class people basically, slum dwellers and so on, as you work and live among them, your vision begins to change and you're able to see the world in a very different way. Now you no longer have to be taught by your professors or your teachers or by books on the answers to certain questions regarding class struggle, exploitation, globalization, and so on. You don't need that anymore. It comes because your experience with ordinary people teaches you to look at the world in a very different way. The third point I want to make is that the way to knowledge is through mass movements and struggle. It's very important. I had the good fortune when I was very young that the country erupted with mass movements and struggles for social change. Indira Gandhi imposed the emergency in India, and tens and thousands of people were arrested and thrown in jail. So I grew up fighting against the emergency of Indira Gandhi. There was a nationwide railway strike. There was a nationwide textile strike. There was exploitation and violence by the state everywhere. So if you're a young person and you get a chance to immerse yourself in struggle, you get the good opportunity, let us say, to actually participate in struggles for freedom. Join and take those struggles up immediately and without hesitation. Because the best teacher of a young person, the best way to learn the lessons of human rights work is by participating in the struggles and movements of ordinary people. My last message is this. Those of you who are in your 20s, the next 20, 30 years is going to be unimaginably different from the past. The signs of turmoil have spread far beyond the boundaries of the developing world. They've reached Europe, they've reached America, and you can see the flames eruption of social strife everywhere. You can see it in unemployment, you can see it in racism, you can see it in so many things. The world is going to be a very different place, and here we're not even taking into consideration climate change, which has already tipped the world over the precipice. It's gone, the world is gone. Unless human beings manage to do something remarkably different in the next few years, which is not going to happen as long as men are in control. The world is going to carry on as it is. So you can imagine, if you think that your lives are going to be like the lives of your parents before you, reasonably comfortable lives, you're in for a very big shock. And you must be ready for the years to come, for the turmoil and the stress of the years to come, for the difficulties of the years to come. And you must be mentally prepared and ready to live a very different life, a very simple life. Go down to basics, power down, so that your footprint on the earth will be very mild, and aspire for nothing more than spiritual satisfaction and peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your words. To say the last few sentences that we all need to come to the basics of life, basics of being a part of nature, which is a real challenge in the world of individualism, the world of consumption. So I think the kind words said by Mr. Colin Gonzalez is that this need to be reflected in the context of even more unexpected disasters are coming, even more difficult climate impacted problems are coming, and how should we be prepared? So just to conclude with a few words, I was told that I'm very sorry, we do not have the time for the Q&A, but we can follow the discussion at tea break. May I just say that the world as it is, we already are witnessing a worsening context. But we also need to see the strengthening part, that the core is all this need to be linked with new spirituality, the meaning of how our spirit of work, our spirit of life, our spirit of sharing can be a part of our identity formation together. So my point here related to redefining democracy in terms of what Dr. Vandana Shiva said, earth democracy. In that aspect, the Right Livelihood Award with its global and humanity connections can give a big platform for this new sense of identity, a part of nature, a part of just a part with other non-humans, and also the planet. Next is also democracy as it is, politics as it is, has been captured and defined only in territorial, called nation state. And the logic of nation state and the logic of geopolitics have been dominating why the earth are in a worsening and terrible shape. Amazon, just a case, Mekong River, another case. We can cite the commons have been exploited in very tragic way according to the territorial units called nation state and sovereignty of the kind. So sovereignty cannot be left to the geopolitical alone. It is clear from the keynote speeches that sovereignty rests with all of us, rests with life that is recognizing its own burden to the earth, and also it's our common responsibility to work together and to heal, and especially to heal the devastation that human lives have been done to other lives, among sexes, as well as among countries. So in this aspect, may I highlight the spirit of the words through Madam Muni, also that we need to recognize the existing framework of impunity, which is still unlearning in the context of worsening planet. The sense of responsibility is where our solidarity will ground ourselves. Our solidarity will go beyond just simple geographical. And I think Right Livelihood, School for Well-Being, and we have heard all the keynotes that we will translate and also discuss further your key messages into how we can exchange for strengthening our spirit, our work, as well as our intergenerational sharing. I hope that this will open up for the next discussion that will make us more engaged and make a university like Chula a part of such efforts together with all of you. May I say to ask all of you to express our gratitude to the keynote speeches from our three speakers, please.
Thank you very much, all of our speakers, for your inspiring speeches, and also Professor Surishai for your wonderful moderating. Now it's time for our coffee break. It is in the hall area where you enter. Please enjoy, meet new people, and come back in 30 minutes, please.